What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog. Another fun video for you guys. This one we're looking at a Jund list for Historic. And the build around for this was Vaevictis Asmadi the Dire. Obviously I brewed around this in Brawl and had a ton of fun with it on the FNM event. I have played with this card in Constructed play. Obviously it's not as good. It's definitely more of kind of a EDH Commander Brawl type card because it is just more on the fun, jankier side. But I have played it some in some, historic or even standard back in the day, and it can do okay as long as you're not up against any like meta decks or that kind of thing. But yeah, just to kind of review what Vaevictis does. It's a 6 mana 6/6 flying legendary Elder Dragon. It's 3 black, red, and green, and whenever it attacks, we get to choose a permanent for each player. So we choose something on our side, and we choose something on our opponent's side, and then each player has to sacrifice that permanent. So it's a nice kind of way to get around indestructible. And then each player sacrifices a permanent, reveals the top card of your library. If it's a permanent, it comes onto the battlefield. So if it's like a instant or sorcery, it stays on top of the library, but it is revealed, so you know what your opponent is about to draw into. And of course, we're playing 100% permanents. Everything in here is a land, a creature, planeswalker, or enchantment. So we're going to hit something every single time with this. Our opponent, of course, is not going to be prepared for that because they're going to have a mix of spells and permanents. But occasionally you will give your opponent something really, really good, which kind of sucks. But you're also going to be doing just some crazy things, and it's just a fun card to play with. So we're going to take it into some historic rank because I do like best of 3 over best of 1, and we're just going to see how we do. So some of the best things you can do is like removal spells. And so we have a pretty nice package here with Ravenous Chupacabra. Obviously, pulling this off the top of your library with the Vaevictis attack trigger is pretty sweet because then you get to blow up one of their other creatures. And also we have a couple copies of Cavalier of Night. It's another fantastic removal spell for creatures. And then the lifelink is pretty great because we can get off to some slow starts sometimes. And then, of course, if they do have removal for it, we can just get back one of our 2 or 3 drops. And we also have some Vivien Reids here, as we can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or a creature with flying. So of course Vaevictis has flying, so this can kind of clear the air, clear the sky, so Vaevictis can get a free, basically a free attack in. And then just a card advantage to be able to dig for potentially Vaevictis or a land. Since we are a 3-color deck, sometimes you will struggle occasionally with finding the right balance of colors. Mana base is pretty decent, but if you don't draw into it for some reason, then Vivien can help you find that additional land you're looking for. We also have some Domris here for some additional card advantage, and it's a way to haste in Vaevictis because that's really the best way to get value off of Vaevictis is if you have haste, because you don't want to give your opponent a chance to kill it. So at least being able to haste it in and get one trigger off of it, you're going to get some immediate value. And so we have a couple copies of Domri in here. Because we can +1 to add red or green to our mana, and then if we spend that on a creature spell, it gains Riot. Riot, of course, you can choose to put a +1 counter on it, +1/+1 counter to be more specific, or you can give it haste. So ideally, we want to have Vaevictis with haste and get an automatic free attack trigger, hopefully. Or if we're looking for Vaevictis, we can -3 and look for up to 2 creature cards out of our top 4 cards, and so we are very creature heavy. We should be able to find 1 for sure, and 2, I'd say probably about 3/4 of the time with this card, since we have a total of 27 creatures, so that's pretty, it's almost half our deck, so we should have a pretty successful hit rate with Domri. Of course, another way we can haste it in is a couple copies of Rhythm of the Wild, which also has the bonus of creature spells you control can't be countered. But then all of our creatures now have Riot, so we can either haste them in or make them a little bit bigger. And we also have the Great Henge as some additional card advantage. Obviously we do have some big beefy creatures. Rhythm makes them a little bit bigger, and so we'll be able to cast the Great Henge pretty easily by getting powerful creatures out. And then we can, of course, use it for life gain and make our creatures even bigger, and to draw cards since we have so many creatures in our deck. It is legendary, so we just want the 1. Same thing with Vaevictis. It is legendary, so we just want the 2. That is kind of our top end. That is the main genesis behind the deck, but we also want to have other ways of winning, especially when you're in competitive rank type play. You can't just lean on one particular card to carry the day, unless of course you're like playing Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, or something stupid like that. So we also have a Shadowspear as a way to kind of get us some life back against the other more aggressive decks, and of course being able to give our bigger creatures like Vaevictis trample. Nice way to kind of get damage through. For the early game, though, we do have 4 Merfolk Branchwalkers and 4 Paradise Druids. Of course, Paradise Druid for the fixing for a 3-color deck. Branchwalker can also help us find lands, of course, with the Explorer mechanic. So that's why we're just running just the 24 lands, because we have the Druid, and we have the Explorer creatures with all 4 Branchwalkers, and then, of course, 3 Jadelight Rangers. The double green makes it a little tricky, so I just think 3 seems like the right amount. 4 is probably just a little too ambitious, but obviously being able to explore twice is pretty powerful. And then we do have some additional card advantage here in Midnight Reaper, just a creature with card advantage, and a 3/2 at that is pretty solid. And we do have a creature removal here with Murderous Rider as a 2 of. Just kind of gives us a little more game against any bigger creatures on our opponent's side, and of course Planeswalkers. And of course just the 2 copies of Rhythm of the Wild. You don't always want to cast this on curve if you're up against very creature-heavy deck. You don't necessarily want to take a turn off just to play your enchantment. But obviously in the right situations, especially against mid-range and other control decks, if your opponent's not really threatening you, then you're happy to play this on turn 3. Otherwise, you just have the 2 copies here, so you can kind of play it when you're ready to, when it's kind of safe to maybe take a turn off, or you have, say, 5 mana, and you can drop a Rhythm plus like a Branchwalker or something like that. And then, of course, the 3 Chupacabras, and then also a couple Questing Beasts as a way to kind of help us out with Planeswalkers, and just being a fantastic card in and of itself with the 4/4 Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste. And then, of course, 1 copy of Polukranos. It's a creature that also acts as removal, as it can fight other creatures. And, of course, with the Vaevictis, if we get some triggers off of it, we're going to be sacrificing our own stuff as well. So we're going to be filling up our graveyard. And so we'll be able to escape this potentially later on. And then Vraska is another kind of removal spell and potential source of card advantage. And, of course, if she sticks around, then her -9 can be game-ending, because we can just haste something in and steal any damage, and we win the game. And then just the 2 copies of Domri. And also at our top end here, we got a couple copies of Skarrgan Hellkite. And of course, the Skarrgan itself has a Riot, so this with, say, Domri and or Rhythm of the Wild, you can just get really big and with haste. So just another nice aggressive creature here at 5 mana. And then the 2 copies of Vivien, of course, for the card advantage and removal. So going over the mana base here, we are mostly skewed towards green, and still a good amount of black. And then red is just kind of our 3rd color, so not as many sources. So we got the Swamp, a couple Forests, Blood Crypt as a 4 of, Dragonskull Summit 2, and some of the Scrylands here, since we don't have very many 1-drops. Just a Shadowspear, so we're fine playing the Temple on 1. And of course, if you hit this off Vaevictis, it's kind of nice to get that little Scry action. So that's pretty cool. The Overgrown Tomb as a 4 of, Temple of Malady, Woodland Cemetery, Rootbound Crag, and of course all 4 Stomping Grounds. So that's the main deck. Sideboard is still maybe a little bit of a work in progress, but we have a couple copies of Mire's Grasp. Again, just trying to keep our removal in the form of permanence, and so having an enchantment that gives a creature -3/-3. And if you don't kill something, you always reduce it down to size. A couple copies of Direfleet Daredevil. Anytime we think we can cast our opponent's instants and sorceries, shocks, thought erasures, things like that, Direfleet Daredevil can come in just as a 2 of. Another Murderous Rider for some additional removal. A Virulent Plague, of course, against like Field of the Dead, or even like Mono Red with Annex and things like that. Tibalt, obviously, for those life gain decks. Reclamation Sage. When it comes in, you destroy an artifact or enchantment, so just a fantastic way for us to deal with that. 1 more copy of Rhythm of the Wild for those kind of control matchups, just be able to haste stuff in and not have your creatures be countered. It's really powerful against those kind of decks. A couple copies of Reclamation War. It's a permanent that's in the form of a 1-sided board wipe, so that's pretty cool. And then the Eldest Reborn also for those control matchups. Obviously, if you can hit this with a Vaevictis somehow, and then like trigger it, and then kill their Teferi or their Dream Tar or something like that, that's kind of the dream. But we'll see how it goes. All right. So we'll jump into some best of 3 here in Historic rank before Historic goes away again. And see how... Alright, up against Kashikaja Cowboy. No idea what that means. All the way down in bronze. Not sure what we did to deserve that. And seems pretty solid. A couple Branchwalkers, some removal. And eventually be able to get our Hellkite online. So lead on Stomping Ground, and then we get our Cemetery down on turn 2 for the Branchwalker. Follow with the second Branchwalker on 3, and the Tomb untapped probably on 3. We'll see what we draw into. Another Stomping Ground. Okay, so now we have the double red for Hellkite. Opponent on Dimir. Thought Erasure, it's always fun. Of course, Dimir always has it on 2. Okay, they took a Branchwalker, which is interesting. Do they not have a Ritual of Soot in hand in their control deck? Explore another land. So now we're kind of flooding out here. It's not what we wanted to see. Our opponent with no turn 2 plays. Alright, well, we'll attack first, see if they have a Tyrant Scorn. And just play our, actually let's play our Overgrown Tomb. Doesn't matter too much, we'd have the Crag or Summit. Could have played either one of those next turn. Okay, they did have the Tyrant Scorn, but they saved it to see if we'd play something else. I was curious because they knew about these two. Well, they don't know about the Cavalier of Night. They could just have a counterspell here. Drown in the Loch, maybe? Obviously, Sabotage costs 2 blue, and now they have 2 blue. Ritual of Soot does nothing against our 2/2, but let's see if there were any creatures here. Atris, Thief of Sanity, Night Veil Predator, I think we're just Murderous Rider here. We shock land and crash in for 2 and save the Cavalier for the next Kefnet. Maybe haste in the Hellkite next turn. Could just have another Kefnet in hand though. Well, they did put it back in their library, which implies they do not. Okay, looking at our graveyard, looking at their graveyard. They're 1 man off of Command the Dreadhorde, so I'm not sure what they're considering here. 3 cards in hand, a bunch of open mana. Just get our Hellkite down first, or run that into a counterspell first. And hold up Vaevictis for next turn. No escape. Obviously, premier removal spell, counter spell right there. Okay, so probably just Kefnet here. We will Cavalier that, and hopefully they don't have an answer. Questing Beast is pretty solid too. Sacrifice. You've done your job. Slow them down yet again. Still want to get this Vaevictis online next turn. So definitely be looking to cast that and see what they have here. Of course, could just have another counter spell, but kind of pick your poison. Counter run questing beast into a counter spell, or Vaevictis. Oh, does Reborn? So we do get a creature back. I think I'll actually keep that for some card advantage, maybe. We'd have to discard something next turn. I do want to get the Vaevictis down. Domri can always dig for more creatures. Vaevictis can blow up the Eldritch Reborn so they don't get to get one of our creatures back. 2 cards in hand. If they're just counter spells, they don't really do much. They're eyeing Iron Graveyard pretty heavily then. Perhaps just plotting out their Eldritch Reborn. And of course, if they have an answer for Vaevictis, then they will get back a creature. Perhaps our Vaevictis, perhaps our Questing Beast, perhaps our Cavalier. Of course, without a creature for them to sacrifice, Cavalier doesn't really do a whole lot. We will attack all and see what they have. If we can get this trigger, at least we can get rid of our... probably get rid of... What do we not need here? Oh, we don't need a million Stomping Grounds. And get rid of Eldritch Reborn so they don't get anything back. Kefnet does come down, which is unfortunate. So they could block and prevent 6. Or they could block the Branchwalker and go down to 5. So they're holding up Drown in the Lock. Another Vaevictis. Okay. It's not ideal, but if they do find an answer, then we have that going for us. Don't need more lands. There's Domri and plus.
Let's see some panic in the streets. My muscles may be small, but watch out when I
So you go. So they're down to 6, so it's going to be hard for them to attack in with Kefnet. Okay, so they get a free Thought Erasure. They take our second Vaevictis. But doesn't really do much. We can haste in this Murderous Rider as well. As Vaevictis is just going to blow up their Kefnet. And since they are a control-heavy deck, odds of them hitting another permanent are pretty low. But we shall see. Forest. Let's haste in this Murderous Rider. Out the forest as a sacrifice fodder. Okay, Kefnet goes away. We get a Branchwalker. They get a Contempt, which of course they cannot cast. Or does not enter the battlefield, since that's technically what Vaevictis does. Oh, Vivien, that's pretty cool. Alright, so Vaevictis putting some work against this Dimir list. Unfortunately, we don't really have great answers for control. We have our own Eldritch Reborn. We have the Direfleet Daredevils, which we can turn their Thought Erasures against them, but otherwise our options are somewhat limited. See, Rhythm helps our creatures not be countered. Shadowspear is pretty medium. I do like the Reclamation Sage to deal with their Eldritch Reborn. And of course, being able to get rid of their stuff. Another Murderous Rider is tempting. Let's see. Vraska is obviously not as good. Vivien's fine. Pretty much anything that gives us card advantage. So the best thing to do is probably just trim off these 2 drops to make room for the Daredevils. Now we're pretty heavy on 3. So probably cut a Jadelight Ranger. Don't really want to go down too much though. Questing Beast is fine. Polukranos can give us game if they're running long. I think Cavalier's not as good here. Yeah, I think we'll try like that. So Reclamation Sage can take out their Eldest Reborn before they get anything back. And we'd have just enough removal for their Kefnet or any other creatures they might have. I don't know if they're running Thief of Sanity, Night Veil Predator, any of that kind of stuff. It's very likely or possible they just didn't draw into it, but depends on how control heavy they are. Obviously, Tyrant Scorn plus Drown in the luck. It's a lot of dedicated removal and counter magic there. Thought Erasure incoming. Nope, Agonizing Remorse. So Thought Erasure plus Agonizing Remorse. We do only have 4 cards in hand, so I think we just want to get our Paradise Druid down. Rhythm of the Wild. So they do probably just have some counter spells here. So Paradise Druid at least gets around Hexproof for a turn. I'm not sure a second Paradise Druid is worth it if they're just running like a Ritual of Soot, although we do have lots of bigger creatures. Okay, Agonizing Remorse, but they're just down to 3 cards in hand, not really doing anything on the board. They're to Vivien. Okay. So it does answer their flyers. I just want to go wide here. See if we can find another land with this Branchwalker, and if so, we can get our Vaevictis down. Jadelight, I think we'll actually graveyard that. It's a little slow here, a little late. Get our 6th land, we get our Vaevictis down, but of course they are into counterspell territory. So just 2 Agonizing Remorse so far. Well, it's not really doing too much. Missing double black for a Ritual of Soot. It could be have a Kefnet though. Unmoored Ego. Okay, so there goes Vaevictis. We get to draw a card. Well, that sucks. Seems pretty questionable though. Questing Beast is a perfect draw there. If they have Eldest Reborn, it's not really doing too much against me. They're taking a turn off. And yeah. So Unmoored Ego is being a pretty medium card. So we do have Vaevictis to get the value there, but of course we built our deck in such a way so it's not the only way we can win. But obviously when it does go off, which is hard to do in constructed play like this because of all the removal and everything, we did get to see it go off a little bit, and that was pretty cool. And then we saw the opponent respect that with the Unmoored Ego and things like that. But, you know, Questing Beast and other cards just give us the value to work around that, especially in the early game, putting the pressure on, things like that. So, yeah. Vaevictis, super fun, super sweet card. Not very competitive, obviously. Definitely more designed for brawl-type singleton formats. But, yeah, something you can still take in the lower ranks of... the lower tiers of ranked play, I should say. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.